And welcome back. This is part two, or hour two, if you will, of a post-Labor Day, back-to-school, inaugural
kick off the campaign,
thing.
Maybe some of that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah. Tom Sumner here, along with Flint's premier political pundit, Paul Rozycki.
Always good to be here.
Spend some time here on flinttalkradio.com. If you'd like to see us continue these weekly chats, which we're starting today, Tuesdays from 3 to 5, feel free to become a sponsor. And as long as we're getting plugs in.
That's right.
We got a plug in for the book here during the at the end there of the first hour by Andrea Portis, Anatomy of a Misfit. Might as well get a plug in for us. If you want to sponsor the program, get in touch with flinttalkradio.com. and talk to John Wilson or Steve Myers, and they can let you know how you can participate and help keep these things going. And as long as I'm doing plugs, I have to do a plug for my good friend Wendy Liebman. I don't know if you know comedian Wendy Liebman or know her work.
I know the name.
She was very big years ago,
Yeah.
and then she got married to Jeffrey Sherman. And he had young boys, and she sort of dropped out of the business to be a soccer mom, basically, which she makes jokes about. And she is now getting back into the business. Kids are grown, they're in college, et cetera, et cetera. Jeffrey Sherman is, his dad was one of the Sherman brothers that wrote all the music for Disney.
Yeah.
And so it is a small world after all. Wendy Liebman is back in show business and is appearing tonight, if you're watching this live, September 2nd, Tuesday, September 2nd on NBC at 9 p.m. Eastern. She is on America's Got Talent.
Oh, that's worth.
She was Howard Stern's wild card, brought back. And so tonight is the last chance to get her into the finals, the final 12. So she's not in Los Angeles. I always say that Jeffrey Sherman and Wendy Liebman are my favorite Hollywood couple.
It's worth paying attention to it tonight then, yeah.
And she is very, very funny. One of her bits is she talks about, how she doesn't really feel 46 because she's 47 and works her way up into almost her mid-50s by the time she's done. Anyways, very, very funny lady, and check her out. And if you feel so inclined, give my friend a vote to move on to the final 12. That's where I'll be tonight, is watching Wendy.
It's well worth watching. Sounds like it.
So I think we've got all the shameless plugs out of the way.
Yeah, any more plugs we can get in here in the first few minutes?
Now we were talking during the interview, which was pre-recorded earlier, with Andrea Portis. Paul and I were talking about, we used to do this on radio, and it's been several months, and we're getting back into it, and we miss some of the regular callers.
That's right, the regular callers.
We got used to. They were almost like...
Bob and Fred and BJ especially were the regular parts of the program.
It was almost like they were part of the panel.
Yeah.
And especially Bob.
Yeah, Bob was a regular caller, and they had a lot of interesting things to add to almost every discussion. I always appreciated his viewpoints. And he surprised you in a lot of ways. I think Bob said he was a conservative Republican, but when he started talking about some issues, he was
a lot more libertarian.
Yeah, libertarian, and there was more to him than that. It was an interesting discussion. I always appreciated it.
Well, and all of that by way of saying we'd like to encourage you, if you happen to be viewing us now. One of the things about these webcasts is that once they're up there online, you can go see them anytime, which is nice and it's convenient for people. But if you want to take part, you got to be with us live. You got to call when we're actually recording it live. The number is area code 810-208-1854. And during the last hour, we talked a little bit about today being the first day of the new minimum wage. We talked about
and the political implications of all that. Again, nothing is without political implications, but the political implications of how it might or might not affect the turnout in November, and how it might even make the minimum wage issue a somewhat of a dead issue, or at least a minimal issue in the years to come.
And one of the other dead issues that we sort of touched on was the lack of a union presence or celebration in yesterday's for the Labor Day weekend. There really wasn't much going on in the town where.
Yeah, in fact, what was depressing is I think it may have been 25, but one of the local stations was doing getting a shot, and they showed the empty area at Region 1C. Nobody there. I think it was just sort of raining a little bit.
Nothing but statues.
Nothing but statues, and just a few leaves blowing around. And then the same thing at Crossroads. I guess there was a crowd at Crossroads later, but they shot the shot they started off with was Crossroads Village, and that a few people wandering around the buildings, but nothing going out of much consequence whenever they were doing the shoot. So yeah, it was kind of depressing in its own way.
And speaking of statues, I did want to acknowledge one that went up this summer, the Bobby Krim statue.
Yeah.
I think that's long overdue.
I think so.
And it was nice to see that go up. I feel like I should run down and see it, but I don't run anywhere. I don't run in the Krim.
I told my friends that when they were talking about the Krim starting on Saturday, I said, well, I was going to get up early Saturday morning and watch it on TV because I've been in training for all summer for that.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's funny. Well, I mentioned almost parenthetically that you and I used to do this on radio, and we'd have people call in and join in the conversation, and we go in whatever direction you want to go in. But another segment from the old radio show was Armchair Politics, and
that's
we used
right.
to close it with a segment on the X-Files. And just recently, the city of Flint, once again, has...
you can't make this stuff up.
No,
this
you
is
just
too good.
cannot. Here is the headline. This is from August 22nd, a piece with some contributions from AP, but written by MLive Flint Journal writer Ron Fonger. And so this is just about a week ago. And the headline reads, "Could Scientology help save Flint? City Council considers endorsing L. Ron Hubbard program." And I think with all of the weird stuff that Flint goes through with the rankings, for
worst
high crime rate.
In almost every category you can find. By the way, just speaking of ranking, we'll get back to Scientology. You see the rankings that I think the Journal had it over the weekend of the top 10 Michigan cities in a lot of categories. The only one that Flint made the top 10 list was the top 10 tattoos per capita was Flint, Michigan.
Oh, they were trying to do a positive,
something
positive
they were
to
listing
say.
a great number of Michigan cities about different kind of restaurants and
now I may get in
activities.
trouble for this, but that's mostly the women.
It may be, yeah. But Flint, on a per capita basis, we are one of either the one or one of the top 10 pro tattoo places in the country on a per capita basis of tattoo parlors to our population.
Well, I had to laugh at this Scientology thing because we've been through, violent crime statistics. Well, here's the lead for the story. The city council might endorse a program authored by Scientology creator L. Ron Hubbard, a non-religious moral code that some council members think could help change Flint's violent culture. I don't know.
When I saw that, I said, "Come on, this has got to be something out of The Onion. You're making this up, right?" And no, it was serious. And actually, if I recall the article, I think did the chief of police or some other law enforcement official sort of half endorse the idea? Now, the statements they made were nice. They said, something like being nice to people and not murdering people and so forth. They were all nice, general, bland statements. But the Scientology folks have got a reputation that certainly does get into the X-Files zone for the city of Flint.
Actually, here's what Flint's police chief, James Tolbert, had to say. "I think it's a good deal, yes. For the information I've seen, apparently it works. I'm for anything that works." And in his position,
why
wouldn't
what's he going to say?
And apparently, is a woman, Scientologist named Monica Biddle, asked council members on a meeting Wednesday, August 22nd, to consider endorsing the program as a way to help introduce the ideas to the Flint area. Apparently there's a curriculum that they can distribute. There are public
I get-
service announcements, there
Yeah.
are pamphlets and things that they want to put into schools, and they think somehow by adopting a moral code. The booklet briefly describes 21 principles, including take care of yourself, be temperate, don't be promiscuous, love and help children, and honor and help your parents. Those
All
are
nice general statements that you could apply to a lot of situations. That's true, but whether
But
or
we
not-
don't dare put up the Ten Commandments.
No, but we can Scientology.
But
What?
Scientology, you know, you couldn't put the Ten Commandments on the front of City Hall.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But now we're seriously talking. I'm not sure how serious we are, but we're talking about Scientology and their Ten Commandments or their principles, whatever they are. As I say, it was generally an X-Files kind of thing when I first read that.
Well, you know, when you read through the article and you listen to what some of the people say, obviously there's someone here from Scientology, Monica Biddle is her name, who approached the Flint City Council and said, "We got to do something.
Yeah.
You know, if you can't have religion in schools, you know, if you can't have discipline in schools, if parents aren't going to discipline, how are we going to get this message? How are we going to get people to adapt as they called it in the article, a non-religious moral code?" And
Yeah.
you know, when put to the council, it seems like why not consider something like that? But yet, the reputation
That's
of
exactly-
Scientology
yeah, that was it.
isn't as pure as
As
the
those principles-
portrayal here.
Yeah. When you read the principles, I mean, they sound all very nice, well and good. Kind of like the Boy Scout code or the Optimists code or a lot of other clubs that have got codes of, you know, be nice to people and all that kind of stuff. But you're exactly right. The Scientology has got such reputation for being this kind of bizarre cult that's just drawing in a lot of the Hollywood types and have put a lot of money into it, that you have to shake your head about wondering what in the world were we thinking in the city of Flint here.
You know, I had to laugh when you said, you know, to be down on murder and
Yeah,
that
yes,
sort of
we're
thing.
against murder. Well,
And
good.
I think I told you about this when I took my trip up to the UP and went through Marquette. I took the Anatomy of a Murder tour.
Oh, yes.
And went to all the spots. Well, I went to the bar where the original murder took place, and they still have an outline where the chalk outline for the body would be. And there's a placard up in the bar that says, "Murder-free since 1953." and I thought that was the funniest sign I ever saw. But in a city like Flint, where there were
Murder-free since
people
last
being,
Tuesday, maybe.
Well,
Or-
since noon.
Noon, yeah.
You know, it's tragic,
I mean, we joke about it, but you're exactly right.
and
Yeah.
and it's no wonder that people are scrambling to come up with different ways to do things. Like, for example, changing the charter.
Yeah.
Now, I've been a little critical of the Blue Ribbon Committee
So have I.
and the efforts to impact and change Flint's charter, not because Flint's charter doesn't need changing, but I suspect the motives of the people who are driving the change.
Well, because the committee was essentially a secret committee. I think they had a couple of public meetings, but for the most part, it was a secret committee. And again, the people who were on it, they were all, I think, well-intentioned. They worked hard. They produced what looked like a reasonably interesting report. But again, with all the suspicion you've got about the uptown development people and the resentment of the emergency manager, frankly, the last
Well,
thing we
and
need
one
was
of the
a
things that
secret
comes out of
committee.
it, one of the recommendations that comes out of it is that Flint should change from a strong mayoral form of government to a city manager form of government. Well, what is the career path of our current emergency manager? He is
he's a
by
manager.
profession a city manager.
Absolutely.
Of course he's going to think that's the way to
Yeah.
run things. Now, the committee came up with this hybrid with a mayor for ribbon cuttings and all that sort of stuff.
It's
And again, it might be writing job descriptions to the available staff.
I'm thinking
But-
that's exactly the case.
But as of today, it must be today because they wouldn't have met last night,
No.
on Labor Day, the emergency manager was on public radio earlier today talking about going through a process to hire a city manager.
Exactly.
None of this has been voted on yet.
Yeah.
But he says he thinks that, having somebody in place as a city manager will ease the transition to this new form of government, how certain must he be
that this is going to pass? This
that
is going to be on the
everything is
ballot in November. You got to be certain it's going to pass to begin with. And then actually, there's 6 proposals on the ballot. 5 of them would change the existing charter a bit, get rid of a few departments, consolidate some stuff, get rid of some mayoral appointments. But the big thing is a choice for the voters about whether or not you want to appoint or create a new charter commission. If people vote yes, then you get the commission, then they write a charter, and then the voters vote that in. That's a lot of big ifs down the road. But here we are going ahead as if it's already all happened. I mean, even if the voters say yes in November, that charter is not going to be in place for probably a year, maybe more than that down the road after that.
I would think I think a year would be pretty
a year
quick.
Could be optimistic. I mean, a year or two at
But
least.
then there was that one lame duck session,
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah.
things can happen fast.
2 weeks and you get right to work and a lot of other stuff too. Yeah.
No, but interestingly, this all seems like a step-by-step process to essentially dismantle local control in Flint in favor of a regional authority.
It may well be, I think. And we talked before about the fact that I think what may well happen in Flint, with or without a city manager, whether you change your charter or not, is we may go the way of Pontiac, where you keep the map of Flint in place. You call it Flint, but you farm out most of the functions. Police functions, firefighting functions, trash collection, everything else gets farmed out. So you still have a thing that you call Flint, but it's not going to do very much of any consequence.
Well, and also I have to wonder, and this was very suspicious to me when the final sentencing, I guess, in Eric Mays' case, after all the dickering around and finagling by Eric and also by the special prosecutor and all of the hugga-mugga over that whole thing. Then the judge comes down with what seemed like an inappropriate sentence for the charge he was convicted of 72 days in jail.
Yeah.
It's unusual for somebody with a DUI or an operating under the influence to really do any jail time the first time out.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just couldn't help wondering which votes they didn't want him there for.
I think that's true.
And then I start feeling like one of these Facebook conspiracy theory people, how many people know or are in the know and who's talking to who.
And with that case, I mean, I'm kind of an anti-conspiracy guy myself, but when you look at that case, there are some bizarre things about the way the arrest took place, the way it took place in Genesee Township, and the Flint cops are called in and everything else. And then this most recent story, and I don't know what the sense it makes at all, to double his bail. The motion, I think it may be in court today, was to double Mays' bail. Now, the fact is he's out already. He's got a tether on.
He came up with the money and got out.
But now
he bought his way out of jail. So now they're trying to up the ante so that he won't be able to raise enough money to stay out of jail.
My guess is even if they do double it, he'll raise the money. And the fact is, bail is supposed to be, it's not a punishment. It's a way to guarantee you show up for trial. I mean, Mays is going to show up for trial. He's going to call a press conference. He's not going to run away anywhere.
No, he wants his day in court.
That's right. Yeah, he's not
Sometimes
going to go anywhere.
I think he does stuff just so he has to go to court.
If he could have a $2 bail, he's still going to show up in court. He's not going to go anywhere. Yeah.
Now, back to this Scientology saving Flint.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe people watching or listening have had different experiences, but I remember a few years ago getting a call from a very good friend of mine's mother who asked if I would talk to him because he was all caught up in a cult. And she was all upset, and it was Scientology. Mm-hmm. And, I know people who've been involved in Scientology. I know people who claim to be very happy with it and doing well. And then there are the Tom Cruises,
right?
that kind of spoil it for everybody. I don't know if that's the answer. I think it was Josh Freeman during some review by the council of the Blue Ribbon Commission's findings and recommendations, who said that Flint was paying the price for having elected bad leaders who made bad choices.
Well, I think there's some truth in that. I mean, in fact, I was at one of those council meetings when they first presented the report, and it was a pretty raucous affair. I mean, it was a yelling and screaming match, and it did not instill confidence in quiet, well thought out governments. And when I'm thinking, I mean, whatever the value of some of these principles are, and I guess some of those things are very, very nice, I can't help but wonder when people are going to look at Flint and say, oh my God, now what are they doing in Flint? You know, there's one more crazy thing going on in Flint. And for those who would be inclined to bring the emergency manager to an end or let Flint govern itself again, this kind of stuff may give them pause to say, well, maybe they're not quite ready for that stuff.
This should scare you right away. This is from the article that Ron Fonger wrote. It looks like, 10 days ago, something like that. Scientology is aimed at promoting mental and spiritual health by training adherents to overcome the after effects of past traumas, including those believed to have been experienced in previous lifetimes. Through the use of this is my favorite part. This is the thing that brings it all back into the realm of the X-Files. Through the use of what has been termed an e-meter, somewhat like a lie detector, church members undergo exercises and counseling to eliminate negative mental images and achieve a clear state, according to the church. If that were true, if that could be done with the Flint City Council,
they could use some serious negative mental images there. Yeah,
but you're talking about we can't even clear the 45,000 arrest warrants that exist in Genesee County. How are we going to sit everybody down to an e-meter and through counseling and lie detection eliminate negative mental images?
Or the idea that we're going to put everybody in Flint on the e-meter and kind of clear all those negative thoughts for everybody who lives in the city of Flint, all 95 or 100,000 or whatever it is these days. Yeah.
I mean, this takes, I don't know, 1984 to like a
It really does, yeah. And again,
special level.
My knowledge of Scientology is mostly from the media. I don't know that I've known anybody who was involved in it myself, but I mean, from the stuff I've read, that e-meter stuff gets very, very expensive. Doesn't the Scientology church charge their adherents an awful lot of money to go to these various levels to get clear in some way or another? Again, I'm hardly an expert on it, so I'm just talking from what I've seen in the media occasionally over the years.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
The way Flint's budget is,
we can buy an e-meter.
It's hire a city manager or get an e-meter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
there's your choice.
We don't even have street lights. How are we going to buy e-meters?
That's right. Yeah.
We can't even produce water
Yeah.
at the rate that most people consider reasonable.
That is true. Well, as I've mentioned before on earlier programs, I think we pay more in water bill than we do in taxes in Flint at our house. So,
all right, here's a couple of operative things toward the end of the article. Apparently, this is there's a division of Scientology called the Way to Happiness Foundation, and their website says the organization was established as a resource center to assist the public in reversing the current moral decline, and says about 100 million copies of The Way to Happiness have been distributed in more than 97 languages and in more than 170 countries. Foundation website says communities can deal with a lack of moral values and crime by distributing the Way of Happiness book or book on film to offenders to get them back on the right track. The group suggests police officers give the book to members of the community, to neighborhood watch groups and those involved in community policing, get the Way to Happiness public service announcements played for youth group schools, after-school programs, and detention centers, and get educators using the booklet in tutoring and mentoring programs.
I just sort of shake my head.
I wish somebody that was involved in Scientology could call up.
Because
I feel like you, Paul. I really don't know.
I've read some articles and I've seen stuff about Tom Cruise and a few other things there, but I don't know that I've known anybody, I don't think, who was seriously involved in it. So beyond what I've read.
I have known some people who got involved in Scientology and endorse it wholeheartedly, but they're about 1 to 5. Of the people that have good things to say.
I see, yeah.
But again, I haven't really studied it myself. Obviously, the idea of reorienting a community's moral compass would be ideal if it can be done.
The principles are highly desirable. I mean, some of the things that they lay out there are very desirable in a lot of ways, and we've talked for God knows how many years about changing Flint's image of itself and how Flint shouldn't be down on itself and all the rest. So, I mean, it does fit into kind of a take on Flint we've had for years. But again, I'm skeptical only because of that. Again, from what I've read, that so much of this stuff ends up being a fundraiser for Scientology. And my impression is they are a very well-funded organization. They've got huge buildings around the world.
Well, apparently this foundation must have something set up in such a way that communities can access this information for not a lot of expense.
That may be the case. Now, maybe that's the case, yeah. Or
maybe they as a group, I mean, there are individuals who get very committed and very involved and very disciplined within, whatever their belief system is, and they as a group have decided they need to put their message
do some good out there
the way the way the Mormons did.
Yeah, that's
with
true.
big public service campaigns. They did some very effective adoption versus abortion stuff.
I recall
that was
some
very
of that.
Positive, very upbeat, not hateful stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe this is Scientology.
And not to mention, I've noticed other churches occasionally doing that kind of thing. So now this could become kind of a recruiting tool, I suppose, for the Scientologists themselves. But other churches, as I recall, have done similar.
Well,
they
can take over a fallen city here.
Yeah.
They pass out a few pamphlets,
That's
and
right.
some robes, and people will be walking around, with staffs and
that's it. They changed the image
e-meters.
Yeah. Well, didn't Governor
It's going to bust up a lot of marriages.
That's true.
I don't know. I would love to. I don't know if we. This,
like I say, our first
webcast.
It's curious.
I would like to hear from somebody that's been involved with Scientology,
either good or bad,
or that has some thoughts on any of the things that we've been talking about. What would work for the city of Flint? Could Flint ever be the city that it once was? Most people say no, that it has to reinvent itself. How should that? What should that look like?
Well, one of the best lines I've heard over the years was a line from a friend who comments on Flint politics occasionally. He says nothing wrong with Flint that 50 or 80,000 GM jobs wouldn't solve. I mean, that's oversimplifying things, but I think there's some truth in that.
That's what Flint is. Basically, the footprint left by GM.
That's right.
As it walked through this area.
Yeah, it is.
And that now it's trying to figure out. All right, now what do we want to be?
Yeah. Now the usual take is that the uptown development folks are doing something downtown. Things are happening there. The second take is that maybe the universities, all 3 or 4 of the universities and colleges, may gradually turn this into a university town. It's not going to be Ann Arbor, East Lansing, but maybe that's happening a little bit along the way. And then the third thing is the whole medical industry here.
That was Governor Granholm's baby. She wanted everybody in the state to go into the medical profession.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, what if you don't have the right aptitude for that?
Everybody was going into pharmacy or nursing or some other similar medical area for a while. And again, it is producing jobs. I mean, Diplomat Pharmacy is a growing company here. I don't know their employment levels, but they're not GM levels by any means, but they're growing, and the hospitals, all of them around here, produce a lot of employment. But we're clearly changing the definition of what Flint is. Now, the only problem is that, we didn't become an auto town overnight. We came from a lumber town to an auto town somewhat gradually over a number of decades. And I think if this change takes place, if we're going to become a university town or a medical town, it may be, if it works, and it's a big if, we're talking decades in the process.
Do you know offhand, speaking of the college town, I heard a statistic, and I've never really been able to verify it, that the number of college students in Flint, and this is the people who travel in and out,
who are enrolled at one of the
they might be
universities.
part-time students or whatever, but that there's a that it roughly equals the number of students at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
That would seem about, what's Ann Arbor, about 40,000 or so, somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah.
I've heard 30 to 33,000 in Flint. And if you take Mott, U of M, Kettering, Baker, and then you throw in a few others, Davenport and a few others, the smaller universities here, you might get close to that. Yeah. That could well be.
I mean, that seems hard to imagine because
that's because we're hardly Ann Arbor. Now, the reality is some of those students may be somebody taking one class instead of.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. A lot of it's retraining stuff.
Right.
It's a lot of specialty programs, but.
But no, the number I've heard is either 30 or 33,000 of college students in Genesee County area here, going to at least the 3 or the 4 major colleges. So, yeah, like I say, you add a few more from the Davenports and the ITTs and a few others, you might come close to Ann Arbor, East Lansing. Not quite there, but close to it, I think. Yeah.
This idea of Scientology saving Flint, it keeps resonating. And I can't help thinking that after Flint has tried to apply the Scientology principles, that Scientology would bug out of this town faster than Six Flags.
You're right. I'm afraid that's true.
They would make such a hatchet job of it.
Yeah, that's right. As I think about Scientology, you should be careful. This could ruin Scientology. This could be their last hurrah.
Like they're not already fighting some PR battles.
That's true.
Oh, that's too
true.
Funny.
They should be very careful what they ask for.
Hey, give us a call. We're on live, flinttalkradio.com, 208-1854 is the number to call. It's the 810 area code 208-1854. We'd love to hear from you. What do you think is the answer for Flint? Is it Scientology? Could that save the day? They've still got Batman and Superman down in Detroit. So
that's right.
Things are going fine down there because they doubled up on their superheroes, but.
Or is Flint going to become a college town, or is it going to become a medical town?
College towns and medical towns, I mean, they really are compatible.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're not going to have, a lot of medical advancement without the research and development that goes on.
And there's that Michigan State medical facility going downtown. I'm not sure it's there yet, but this year. A facility for some medical training for Michigan State's going to be downtown as well. So,
they got to sweep up the rest of the block there from the Genesee Towers.
Leftover Flint Journal building, I think.
Yeah, they ended up with an extra one.
They did, yeah.
See, the whole time they were talking about moving the farmers market
to
the Flint Journal building, I kept picturing it in the old building.
So did I.
I pictured the whole complex as being adjacent to where Genesee
the old
was,
Journal building,
and it's a full block.
It is
further east.
And I've only been there, I think, once or twice since they've opened, and it was a nice place. And there was some kind of a little deck on top where you had a nice view of the city of Flint. But I think the question I still have is whether it's really a farmer's market. Within the last couple of weeks, my wife and I went to Frankenmuth. We went to a real farmer's market. We just stopped by a farm with some guy with the back of a truck.
Yeah.
And we bought some corn and put it in the car. That's a farmer's market.
It is a farmer's market, and that's what most farmer's markets are supposed to be.
Exactly.
Is really just a row that farmers back their trucks up to and sold off their truck.
Some guy's front yard in front of the farm, I assume, and he had some corn and a few other things for sale. We picked up a few odds and ends, and that was it. Yeah. So.
Well, I'd love to hear from some callers to see what they think we should do next with the city of Flint. You know, we've got we're getting our water out of the Flint River.
We
That
are.
was,
Now, you know, when they first made the transition, I did notice a little change in the taste. Nothing horrible, but I did notice it. Since then, I have not, although I've seen complaints on Facebook from people who live in my area who complain about stains in the tub and the sink and that kind of stuff. But after the first week or two, I didn't notice any change in the taste of the water from the Flint River.
what I can't figure out, and I understand, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Mike Duggan actually talking about prices down in Detroit, saying, and they've been having that turn off,
Right. Oh, yeah.
shut off
Yeah.
crisis. And he said, I wish we could, but there's no way that we can pump water, clean it, you know, and get it to you for free.
Yeah.
You know, we can't
Yeah.
do it. But why can't we deliver Flint water cheaper
I don't
than
know.
buying water from Detroit? That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's actually gone up.
It has, yeah. A couple more dollars, and everything I've read about, I mean, Karegnodi sounds like a great idea, but it doesn't sound like that's going to save us an awful lot of money.
It isn't going to save us any money.
Yeah.
In fact, my guess is that it will be a complete lateral move. In fact, this is the thing that's funny about a development like KWA. The Karegnodi Water Authority is a great idea. It's nice to have
Yeah.
our own system bring the water directly from Port Huron to Flint, but then we're going to get it to Flint and spill 30% of it, just like we did Detroit's
Exactly,
water.
yeah,
You know,
that's-
we
that's
haven't
what-
done anything to fix the infrastructure in the city of Flint,
That-
most of which, or not most, but a lot of which, is over 100 years
Yeah,
old.
and it's showing.
And the reason it's so much cheaper in the out county is most of this stuff is 40 years old.
And it
30 years
doesn't
old.
need continual repair. Yeah, I mean, Flint is losing an awful lot, and the infrastructure.
The
for
estimate is 30% or more.
Yeah. What struck me this summer driving around town is how many roads, we're not talking about bad roads anymore, we're talking about caverns where the road has collapsed into a 10-foot hole ditch. I assume a collapsed water line of some kind is underneath there. And there's,
Or
you know,
sewer.
Or sewer, or there's barriers around that. But I've seen more and more of those on a semi-permanent basis where those barriers were up for weeks or even a month or two over the summer. And it's the stuff either never got repaired or got repaired very, very slowly.
Well, you know, we touched on it, and you mentioned a hot button of mine, which is roads.
Oh, yeah.
The roads are unbelievable and expected to, you know,
Get worse before they get better.
and to be talked about a lot during the next 3 or 4 months as we head into the
Yeah,
November
they should.
election.
If for the number one hot button issue of this campaign, probably roads are it now.
But
You see a few ads, but only a few so far.
I don't know if you remember me mentioning this before on the radio, but I've always wondered why people don't just run to their hardware store, buy a batch of hot mix, and go out and just fill the hole that's bugging them. And you know, if everybody in Michigan did that,
That would be it.
the
Actually,
holes would get patched. Well, except
For-
for supply and demand. I mean, the stores would run out of stuff. and
Yeah,
all
maybe.
That. But if there was, you know, enough materials, the stuff would disappear in 48 hours. And it cost you what? $8-10.
yeah.
Fix a hole.
Now that you mentioned, I do know a case where that actually happened. A friend of ours, we go over there a lot for various picnics and things. The road. This is a subdivision in the Grand Blanc area. And the road there was, I called it a tank trap. I mean, literally, you could not go over 5 miles an hour without just rattling the car. The road had crumbled to nothing. And as far as I know, I believe some of the people there did something like that, because the last time I was there, it wasn't wonderful, but at least it was passable. It was getting to the point
Because
where
they patched the big
they,
holes.
yeah, I assume somebody went out and bought some patch and did what they had to do.
Well, you know, of course, the thing that I find ironic is that's the way we used to do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, how it became all government's job was this gradual progression
Yeah.
of us just getting lazier and lazier. But the thing about that is that now that they have the control, they don't ever want to let it go. You can literally get in trouble for doing what your friend did, which is why I'm glad you didn't mention any names or any streets
now that
or
you
any
mention
addresses.
It, yeah. Now that you mention it, this is another guy who does make a habit of going around. He's got a commercial-sized lawnmower, and has gone around the city of Flint periodically cutting the
vacant lots,
corner
lots,
lots, things
small
like
parks, that kind of thing.
And he was cutting a substantial-sized city park, and he got a cease and desist order from the city of Flint to tell him to stop doing it. And that park has not been cut all that well lately since he stopped. But yeah,
and that's the thing.
It took him a lot of time and a fair amount of money. It took a fair amount of gasoline to do this because he was investing his own money in this stuff. But he got
But if everybody chipped in and did a little bit of that,
that did happen a little bit. Yeah, he did.
Somehow, we're looking at $1.5 billion to fix Michigan roads.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, 1.5 million people going out and spending,
$10 on some road patch. Yeah.
Maybe some who can spend 100, fix a couple of holes.
Yeah.
It would get done like that, and nobody would feel the pinch.
Yeah.
And there'd be some sense of pride and accomplishment, and you get the work done. But you get in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah.
For doing it. Now they got no idea how they're going to raise money. They got no idea how they're going to fix the roads.
And I'm not so sure it's going to happen. It might happen in some lame duck session, maybe. I don't know. But I'm not sure it's going to happen because it's inevitably to do it, you're going to have to raise more revenue, which means you raise taxes on something. Whether you close loopholes or however you want to define it, you got to bring in more money. And politically, that's going to be a very, very hard sell. So, yeah, I don't. And now they might do something in lame duck, but
that's the only way it'll get done.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the only way it'll get done. 208-1854 is the number to call if you want to join us. Remember, if you're watching a podcast of this, you can only call when we're doing it live on Tuesdays from 3 to 5. Then you can be part of the conversation. I hope you will. And I hope some people will look to sponsor it, keep us going. The thing that makes this really work are the people who call in, which I had a feeling that we wouldn't hear from a lot of people in this first one, that it would take
it's a matter of getting used to. Yeah.
But if you'd like to sponsor it, keep it going, and participate in it, remember we're here Tuesdays from 3 to 5. Tom Sumner and Flint's premier political pundit, Paul Rozycki. Today it's kind of a post-Labor Day, back to school
loose ends of stuff we
edition.
haven't talked about in a couple of months.
Well, it has been a couple of months,
Yeah.
and you know what we haven't been talking about? Nobody's been talking about?
What's
With
that?
a big election in November? The bridge.
Oh, that's right, except for Matty Maroon.
Where'd the bridge go?
Yeah. Not a mention of that. Yeah. Now, now that you mention that issue.
Now, is that going to be an October surprise? Big announcement, the feds finally come through with the money.
Well, one take on that whole thing was, I'm not sure where it stands now, because I've not seen, I think I saw one article in the last month briefly mentioning some kind of a lawsuit Matty Maroon had. But one take on that is that the feds are holding back on that because they don't want to give Snyder a victory before the November election. So I think the feds are going to put up some of the money for one of the plazas, weren't they, as I recall?
But I think the Canadians stepped up.
Yeah, they say, let's get this thing done. The Canadians want this done.
Yeah, I think.
They're picking up almost.
And that's the last I heard, was that the Canadians were going to step up.
I believe I heard that too, yeah. But whether it's going to.
And they were grumbling about it, but they were going to do it.
They're really shaking their heads at what Michigan's doing or not doing on this thing, because it's almost a free bridge for us in a lot of ways. But they want it big time.
I think he's going to try and pull it off sometime
right
before the election,
that would be
or at least some kind of a major announcement, and
that would be a huge, October surprise before the election to have that announcement, or maybe even some kind of a.
Is there anything else that could be a Snyder strategy for an October surprise that would lock it up for him. I mean, all the polls are saying that it's going to be a tight one.
It looks
Now,
like it.
I don't know if that's necessarily true
My
because
gut
people poll differently 90 days out.
My gut reactions to, earlier in the year, Snyder was well ahead. Shower was playing catch up by 10 points or more. And somehow, there's this recent poll gave Shower a little bit, a 2-point edge or so. But somehow my gut still says that it's Snyder's to lose. That I think he's, as the incumbent governor, with all the powers in that office, I still think he's got a lot more cards to play than Shower's got. So,
roads,
yeah,
a big road announcement, some kind of a big infrastructure package.
Yeah.
Between now and November would be a real coup.
It would be
for the governor.
Yeah,
and for Republicans all the way up and down the ticket.
And actually, for some of those packages, for some of those things are things you can bring if you Democrats. And if you're going to guarantee jobs, that's why Democrats were on board for the bridge. That was going to guarantee a lot of jobs. And so if you put together a road project, it's going to be hard for construction unions and all the rest to say no to that kind of a deal.
The other thing would be the bridge.
Yeah.
Those are the only two that I can really see.
I can't see any. Yeah, I mean, unless there's some dramatic.
He bought his way back on education funding a little bit.
Somewhat, yeah.
In the last budget cycle, and he's made a couple of other. He's mended a couple of other wounds.
He has. Now, it would be worth seeing what he does with the senior tax stuff. That could hurt him a bit because that's a traditional Republican constituency. And so certainly some of the ads that Shower's running are hitting away at that so-called senior tax. I'm not sure there's much he can do with that kind of thing at this point, unless there's some other kind of action to bring those folks back on board. Because they could be an important constituency. They turn out to
they've
vote
got
good numbers.
that one senior with the riding lawn.
Yes,
That one is Snyder, boy, I don't know.
Oh, that's
one of the best ones I've seen so far. The others all seem, like they were written by Karl Rove.
That's true. Yeah,
but that one really seems to work. It really seems to resonate, that message of, regular people that got hurt.
My boy, I retired.
That's the guy. That's that guy that lives across the street.
Yeah, he sort of sounds like, and has well-produced commercial and so forth. Some of the other ads that are aimed at women, I think some of those are. The one that just struck me as almost silly was the one where the woman's making flatbread. And said, "Gee, I was just talking to Rick, and he was giving me some advice on my own business." I mean, I understand where he's coming from and how the ad was put together, but it just doesn't quite ring true. It seems a little phony to me.
Well, and the Republicans had that same problem 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When they were going through the presidential election, that was
tradition.
Everything they were just as desperate for women's support and struggled just as badly with messages being insincere. Of course, they had a couple of people that shot themselves in the foot.
They did.
Too.
They really did. They went way over the top with that kind of stuff. And I think Republicans have avoided those kind of over-the-top gaps this time so far. We'll see what happens. But all in all, as I say, I think we're going to see Democrats targeting women an awful lot to get them to turn out, because they do tend to vote a bit more Democratic. And you're seeing Snyder playing defense on that so far. But the real key thing is, will they turn out to vote? Because there's really not a hot button issue out there. I mean, the right to work is not catching fire the way I thought it would.
That was going to be, that was going to be part of the 1-2 punch. That was going to be part of 10-10.
That's right.
Let's fight back against the right to work thing.
And you're seeing some of that with some of the ads, some of the idea of Snyder being this upper class, rich businessman, not worried about the average guy. Some of those things with some of the ads about some of his staffers who were getting very well paid. I think there's that fellow from Utah, Nixon, getting $300,000, and a few others in a similar category. Some of those may hit away at that declining middle class.
I'm still seeing references to Andy Dillon.
I did see
still
one.
being on the
I saw
payroll
one
somehow.
once. Well, he was let go after some of the alcohol issues, I guess, and so forth, but still on the payroll apparently.
Well, he stepped down, but they kept him on the payroll
Yeah.
for some transitionary period as
And-
a consultant to the
Right.
new treasurer or something.
Yeah.
And this article that I just saw recently over the summer seemed as if that never ended.
I've not heard that it ended, and again, that they made a big at the Democratic convention a couple of weeks ago. They made a big point about that, him being on the payroll. So whether he's still currently getting a check, that's been what, a year and a half, something like that. I don't know, but I never saw a story to the effect that it ended. I know he was on the payroll for a while. Whether he's still there, I
Which
don't
makes
know.
me wonder who signs off on Darnell Early, the emergency manager for the city of Flint, hiring a city manager.
Well, my understanding is the emergency manager has got such a blank check to remake city government. I mean, they can literally close down departments and even in some cases, even abolish cities if they choose to in some cases. So one of the critics of the current emergency manager law is that these folks are not just financial managers. They really have the power to start from point zero and redraw the map and redo cities any way they want, whether they want to bring in let the city council meet or not let it meet, or have a mayor, have a city manager.
That raises an interesting thing, and we just have a few minutes to touch on this, but it really has to do with gerrymandering. And
oh, yeah.
is it possible now, the way this has gone back and forth over the last, I don't know how many election cycles, is it possible now to have a district that isn't a lock?
Oh, it's possible. Whether it's going to happen, if I had to bet,
should there be any surprises other than, a statewide race like right now where the
Yeah.
governor is polling
No,
badly?
I don't think
that
we'll
could
see.
go either way. But I'm talking about in races like Woodrow Stanley's seat that he's leaving. Term limits have him out.
90%
Sheldon-
Democratic. Sheldon Neely is all but elected for all practical purposes. No, I think you're right.
Dan Kilde's seat.
Dan Kildee he's got some token opposition, but that's I think
Tom Whitmire, I believe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's his name. It seems like a decent candidate, but
the reality is he's got no chance of winning that seat. And I think for every other incumbent in the state, I don't think anyone faces a really serious challenge. The odds are very. I mean, there's a couple of changes in the Detroit area in terms of names, but as far as party alignments go, I don't think you're going to see any change at all. And that's true nationwide. I mean, nationwide, for all the funniest thing is, for all the complaining you do about Congress, you ask people, do you like the Congress? They're doing a good job. You just get 90%, 95%.
Yeah, there was that poll a year or two ago where cockroaches
were ahead of
they had better popularity numbers.
Yeah, Al Qaeda comes out ahead of Congress most of the time. So yeah, but the fact is that I'm willing to bet right now that 90% or 95% of all incumbents are going to get elected in November.
Well,
nationwide.
because in related polling, while people will say they have that low opinion of Congress,
yeah.
they generally like their
Oh yeah, my
congressman.
guy's great. It's the rest of them that are all crooks. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Or there's something wrong with the system because my guy's okay, but he keeps going to Washington and it keeps being bad. And,
Right. Right.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, a big part of why that is because people don't participate in primaries.
That's exactly right.
You participated in a series of forums that I hosted, which I appreciated very much. Some of those are still up on YouTube. We looked at some of the Genesee County Commission races and that Woodrow Stanley
34th
seat.
District Woodrow Stanley seat. Which was
And
that was kind of the biggest race in Genesee County.
any surprises?
Not shy. I mean, Neely did better than I thought. At the end, I thought he had to win. What surprised me in that race a little bit was that Jeff Bean did not do better. I thought Jeff Bean would be competitive.
I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah.
But again, are we getting into those demographic strongholds.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, is that a black-white one versus a Republican-Democrat
Well,
one?
it
We
could
know
be-
it's a Democratic seat,
It's very democratic.
you know, by huge numbers.
But with 8 candidates and 6 of them were African American, there was the possibility that that might split up the vote. Now, it didn't happen because I think Bean almost got beat by Mays. Mays was a little behind, but not much. So that surprised me an awful lot.
And Mays he wasn't going door to door. He was spending all his time in court.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, the one surprise that hasn't gotten a lot of attention and probably won't, and I have to think that it's a little bit of a weird strategy. Jamie Curtis, who beat
Yes.
Danny Wells, that was a little bit of a surprise.
That was for me too. I
But
thought,
with all the animal rescue groups in Genesee County and
Yeah.
all the
All the
fuss
anger.
about Peggy Adams and her chairmanship of the Animal Control Subcommittee, she won the primary very handily.
She did.
Which puts her in a good position to win the general. But she resigned her position
just because
post-victory
Yeah.
from the Animal Control Subcommittee, and they gave it to
Ted Henry.
Ted Henry, who's running unopposed.
Yes.
So he's not in any danger
Yeah.
of any opposition, even if there is some. It won't cost him his seat.
That's true.
I challenge people to watch January 2015 when they convene
Right.
as the newly elected same old county board of commissioners, except for one or two.
Yeah.
We're going to see Brian Nolden over there, I think.
Yeah.
But see if she ends up with that back.
Picks it up again. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
If it's just a
'Cause it's very
sidestep
very
for the
surprising.
campaign.
Because she was clearly, as a matter of fact, it was interesting in terms of the forums that you had over during July. I think the best attended forum and the loudest one by a long shot was the one where you had the animal rights folks at the White Horse.
It absolutely was. Anyway, we've got to just about wrap things up, and I'm going to squeeze in one more shameless plug. If you'd like to see us continue to do these programs and you'd like to participate, and call us at 208-1854. You might also think about becoming a sponsor, and by doing that, you can help ensure that we can keep doing these conversations every week and take phone calls from people. We didn't have any today, but this was our first one. I didn't expect to see a bunch, but hopefully if you see this on the podcast, realize that you have to join us Tuesdays between 3 and 5 in order to call in and participate in the program. And if you'd like to sponsor the program, contact flinttalkradio.com, either John Wilson or Steve Myers. Let them know your interest, and they'll help work things out for you. In the meantime, I'm going to say thanks to my...
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk about and the politics here never gets dull, whether it's Scientology.
Oh, there's going to be a lot of good stuff to come.
It never gets dull.
And, where else are you going to get Scientology taking over the city council?
The Onion couldn't make up stuff like this.
It's going to be a Scientology party by the next election. And but I also want to thank author Andrea Portas, who was in part 1 of the program today, talking about her new book, which I guess is going to be made into a movie, Anatomy of a Misfit. She is a best-selling writer who's had books turned into movies before. Anyway, it's been great. Thanks to John Wilson and Master Control, and to all of you for watching. That wraps it up for this
Post-Labor Day.
Post-Labor Day, back to school, whatever edition of the Tom Sumner program. Tom Sumner, Paul Rozycki saying see ya.